BackYard DIY Engineering. This is Jim coming at you. So for this build this week, we've got DoRag. He's going to build his first supercomputer. Alright, for our first component is going to be an ASRock B450 Pro 4, which comes with a 7.1 channel HD audio. It has onboard graphics. We're not going to use it. It has AMD Quad Crossfire X technology. It has 6 USB Gen 1s, 2 USB Gen 3.1 or 3.0, excuse me, Gen 2s. It also has 2 M.2 slots, one NVMe capability. The other is a typical SATA type M.2 slot. So this board's pretty cool. It's got really nice heat sinks on the north and south bridges. It also has 2 16-lane PCI Express slots along with 4 memory slots, capability of 64 gigs is what the board's actually intended for, up to 3200 megahertz. The board also has 4 more PCI Express 4 lanes. So very nice, robust board. Actually it's one of the, I'd have to say, the cleanest, and it doesn't look overpopulated motherboards. What I like about that is it does good heat dissipation. With the motherboard being one of the most important components, one thing we want to do is make sure that we ensure safety. Safety. Not just your safety of the motherboard and all of its electronics. One thing you'll hear throughout this, I'm going to say ground yourself. It's very important that you keep static electricity. I'm lucky enough that my flooring actually is a static safe flooring.
Hey guys, it's DoRag here, back at it again at the BackYard DIY Engineering channel.
Alright there, DoRag, our first thing to do is let's pull that motherboard on out of the bag.
Yep, that's what we're gonna do.
Alright, so let's get ready for the first set of components to go onto this board. Alright there, DoRag, our first device that we're going to put on there is the NVMe 970 Pro by Samsung. This thing's pretty cool. This thing can write up to 2300 megabytes per second. Simultaneously, it can be reading 3500 megabytes per second. It is the fastest drive out on the market at the moment. It is an NVMe 1.3 PCI Express 3.0 Gen 4 times. Okay, DoRag, let's put that thing on in there. So one thing to keep in mind with these drives is be very careful with the pins on the end.
Yep, I was very careful with the pins.
Also, you'll notice that it has a small side and a long side. Normally, the easiest thing to look at is that the label always goes up when installing it. And then you just press it down once you pushed it all the way in and actually install the screw.
So hey, Jim, how can you mess this thing up?
Well, honestly, what people have done before is they put them in upside down and force them into the sockets. Because they cut the notch a little bit open, it is and can be shoved in upside down, and it can damage the board. Alright, DoRag, let's get ready for the next component. Our processor. It's an AMD Ryzen 7 2700X. This thing's awesome, man. It has 8 CPU cores with 16 threads. So that essentially means it's got 16 processors. Each base clock speed of the processor is 3.7. We will be overclocking it, which it has a max boost clock of 4.3. We will definitely be leaving it up there. Has an L1 cache of 760 kilobytes with an L2 cache of 4 megabytes and a total L3 cache of 16 megabytes. That's a pretty good L3 cache. For those that don't know what L caches are. The different L layers are actually the different speeds. So L1 is like within the processor. L2 is kind of on the outside, and L3 is on the very supremacist on the outside of the processor. And when I say outside, it's in there, but not exactly like inside the core parts. As you can see, it is an AMD AM4 package, so that's the package type. Pretty neat little thing. I'm telling you, it's very small. It only has a TDP of 105 watts, which is awesome. You know, it doesn't put off a lot of heat. 4 years ago, that thing would be 300-400 watts to produce that same type of power. Let's get it in the system. With this awesome processor comes an awesome liquid pipe cooler. It is the AMD Wrath Prism cooler. It's pretty neat, man. This thing's got LEDs all over it. It comes with a 100mm fan on the top. Liquid cool piping to draw that heat away from that processor and up into the cooling fins. We will be eventually changing this out because we're going to overclock the processor and we're going to put a liquid cooler on. But for this build, this is what we're going to use.
Okay, so Jim, what is that white stuff on the bottom of that cooler?
So there, DoRag, that is actually a thermal paste. What that does is it creates a thermal layer between the processor and the actual dissipator, allowing a increased amount of thermal energy to transfer from the hotter device into the cooler device. Without that thermal paste, you wouldn't have the same cooling capabilities as just doing a metal to metal contact. Alright, DoRag, let's get that thing installed. So let's get started here. Take it on out of the box. Yeah. Alright. Make sure you're careful not to drop it on the floor. The pins are very sensitive. Here, I'll show you. Let's take it out. Make sure you take it out so that the pins are facing up. Be very careful that you don't bend any of these pins. Okay, see, if you flip it out, flip it onto your hand like that, now you're not touching the pins.
So Jim, do we just put the processor on, or is there more obstacles to put it on?
No, there are, DoRag. So one thing we're gonna show here, we'll show everybody, is there's a notch actually on the processor. Let's zoom in here, take a good shot here. If you notice, one of the corners is actually notched at a 90-degree down at the bottom right there, where the other ones are just like, you know, they're kind of 45-degree angled. And you see the same notch there on the motherboard. So whenever you're taking it out, make sure that we put it in there. Now let's lift that lever up. That is the locking lever that actually locks the pins in place and applies pressure to the pins to the contact points to ensure that all pins are making contact. Let's flip it over. So yeah, there we go. Let's flip it over so that when you pull it out, the pins are not in your hand. All right, open the back. Yep.
Be careful not to drop it also.
I probably told him that about 25 times since this video. So he's a bit nervous. Great job. So yeah, just pull on down on the handle. You may one thing I like to do is to look around the processor, make sure it's not sitting up, and then just give it just a light pressure down. If it is sitting up, check to find out why it's sitting up. Most of the time it means the pin's not lined up correctly and you can damage. So for the next component, it's just a typical SATA M.2 drive, 530 megabytes max read, 500 megabytes max write. Let's get this thing installed there, DoRag. Alright, so let me get this thing unpackaged for you. This thing is like in a tank. Alright, here, cut this thing open. Alright, here you go, bud. Well, maybe not. I cannot get it out. Of course, I've got the razor blade right in front of me. You would think I'd use it.
Okay, so Jim, what side should I put up in the slot?
Alright, so they typically always put the label on the side that should face up. But just in case, if you look right here on this one side of the other side, flip it over. Nope, not that way.
Okay.
Yeah, flip it over. Yeah, see, alright, so you got the label up. But also, if you look at it, there's these little metal piece down at the bottom, and that's where the actual contact for the ground is. So, that's why they always normally, see right there, that's the contact for the ground. So that would be the side to put up. But, and also, when you go to put it in, if it's hard, then you're putting it in wrong. It should just slide right on in the slot. Yeah, go ahead and just push it in. Put a little bit of pressure. You're not going to break it. Yeah, push it until it... Yeah, you definitely know if it's not right. All right, got one side in. There you go. Now, once you got both sides in there, you're going to, push it on down and put another screw in it.
Okay.
Make sure that it's good and tight.
So, Jim, what does this SATA drive do?
So, a SATA drive, essentially, DoRag, is just a hard drive type. So, what a hard drive does is it stores your permanent information in your computer. That was a great question. So, anytime you want something and you want it to stay inside of your computer and you don't want it to leave, like your video games, you don't want to have to download your video games again and again and again. So, you would put your video games on a hard drive.
Like I did in my computer.
Alright, DoRag, so we got to put all this stuff in something. So what we got here is a very, very cheap case. I went with a cheap case because we are actually going to be doing another video in a few weeks where we actually custom build our own case. So we just wanted something cheap and easy and that would work for this system build. It does come with two 120mm fans in and out, so it's pretty cool. Next, we need our power supply. So we went with a 750 watt gold series power supply. This thing's pretty neat. It will power everything that we've got inside of our system. Hey, check it out. It comes with a bag of cables. Hey, gotta need plenty of cables. The rest of it's pretty cool construction. It's aluminum, so it's light. It's not super heavy, which I like. Alright, DoRag, let's get this thing together. Let's put some stuff in this box.
So let's install the ATX power supply.
Alright, so let's make sure we get cables out the way and let's go ahead and put this thing on in. Next, you're going to go ahead and put all the screws in the back of it, one by one. Don't tighten them all the way up at the beginning. Just get them all started and then come back and tighten them up.
So what does ATX necessarily mean?
So ATX is the form factor of the board. It kind of tells everybody what plugs are going to be on the motherboard. Alright, let's get that motherboard in there. In order to do that, though, we need to make sure that all of the standoffs and the cables are out of the way. There's little gold standoffs in there. We need to make sure they're in the proper positions. So let's put it in there. Great job there, DoRag, on the way you're handling the board. Be very careful when placing it in there, but using those fan mounts is a great place to handle the board. They kind of give you good grip, and they're very safe for them to go there. And that's the place that I like to grab the motherboard from.
I got it in there, so what should we do next?
Next, what we need to do is get all the screws started in those gold standoffs that we put in. We need to get them all started. We don't want to tighten any of them down because there's so many of them that you want to make sure that you get them all started. Because if you tighten one down, you may have to shimmy the board a little bit to get another one started. And then you're going back and forth, loosening them up, tightening them back up. So let's get them all to that state.
So, is there a certain type of screws you should use?
It's a great question. I've seen many people strip these things out because they put the wrong screws in them. The best thing to do is take one of the extra standoffs that you have on the side there and test the screws that they send, because unfortunately, any of the metal parts where you actually go in the sheet metal uses a real coarse thread, but these standoffs actually use a very fine thread screw. So make sure that you do grab the proper screw, and before you put it in, you'll know real quickly if it's not right. If it doesn't want to go in, don't force it into the system. let's go ahead and get the remaining screws in there. Let's go for a speed record here. So this is one place definitely I will use the manual, and that is hooking up all the cables. You know, every motherboard's different, and they all seem to play games with you on how the actual cables connect to the board. So the first things we want to work on is actually connecting up the front panel cable. So that's your USB 3.0 external ports that are on the front, your USB 2.0 ports that are on the front. You've got a start button, a stop button, an LED button, not an LED button, an LED light, and there's also the fan cables and such.
So, Jim, do you think this build has gone so far?
Yeah, it's been a pretty good build. How about yourself? You having fun?
Yeah, I'm having fun.
So one thing there, DoRag, when you're running those cables, make sure you run them so that they're easy to tie up at the end, and we can make them look, I like to say look pretty, but look nice and neat at the end, because that's very important that the cables are easily...
They're kind of tangled up there a little bit.
Yep, so the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to install that awesome CPU cooler. This thing... real big. You know, DoRag actually brought up a good point a few minutes ago while we were talking on the side. He said, you know, why didn't we just install this while we had the motherboard out? And honestly, I probably should have. That's one thing, you know, next time I do this, I would definitely put that cooler on the outside. Originally, we were going to build this project with the big water cooler, so, you know, I wasn't thinking about doing it then, because you definitely don't want to do that until you get it in the box. But that was a great question. I just wanted to pass that on. That was a question from him. So one thing, when you put the cooler in, it locks on one side, and then it has a little keeper on the other side, and you once you get that on, then you just push the latch over, and it actually pulls it down really tight against the processor. It pulls real hard. It's very important that temperature is transferred from that processor to that heatsink, and the only way to do that is to make sure you got a good tight snug fit, and that again is where that thermal compound comes in handy very well.
Okay, so I've been doing some research on this next piece. Trident Z series, it has a DDR4 memory, and the capacity is 16 gigabytes, and the tested speed was 3000 megahertz.
That's some pretty cool stuff, DoRag. So check it out. This stuff's pretty neat. It's got aluminum heat sinks on both sides. Nice LED across the top. Pretty neat looking thing. DDR4 memory's cool, man. There's a lot of stuff packed in this little thing. Real slick looking thing. Can't wait to see it lit up. All right, let's put this stuff in there. You know, just like everything else, be careful with it. Make sure you don't touch the pins. Memory's also sensitive with the pins. You know, everything seems to be a little less sensitive than what it used to be, but definitely you want to make sure to be careful with it. Let's make sure that we've got all of our cables and everything out of the way, so that we can prepare to easily put these in, because one thing you don't want to do is put them in wrong and damage the slot. So I'm actually going to pull out the book here. One thing about memory is every motherboard likes to put the memory in a certain way. I'm very used to using 1 and 3 or 2 and 4 slots, but I happened to look in the book here, and I noticed that their memory slot channels are actually matched together. So slots 1 and 2 are actually channels A's 1 and A2. So you know, it's first for everything. But so I'm glad I grabbed the book to take a look at that. When you're putting it in there, take a look at the slot that's actually in the middle of the memory stick there. So when you're putting it in, you'll see that one side's shorter and one side's longer. Well, the slot's the same way, so it really won't let you put it in wrong. you know, like your question earlier, can you damage it? Yeah, if you shove it in, you could break the little tab that's down in there and essentially damage the motherboard. Most likely it wouldn't be permanently damaged. It's just that you would have to really pay attention on which way that you're putting in the memory. Now, if you were to start the motherboard up with the memory backwards, I actually do know that will create white smoke. I did that just intentionally in a video one time. All right, so now once you get it in there, so you want to get the side away from the lock in first, and then put the locking side in.
So how hard do we have to push it for it to seal completely in?
That's a great question there. So what you want to do is push pressure until the locking clip actually comes back up into place. All right, DoRag, so let's move on to the next part. Let's get ready to put in this video card. So what are the tools that you've been using?
So I have been using a number 1 Phillips, a number 2 Phillips, and a micro Phillips. The number 1 Phillips is magnetic, which is good so you can't lose your screws.
All right, check it out now. This is a great part of the build. So we got us an XFX RX 580 by Radeon. It is an AMD type graphics card. This thing is so darn cool. It has a 1430 true clock, 1450 overclockable. It has an 8000 megahertz clock memory. Thing is really neat. It's got a real cool intercooler system. It's got DDR5 memory, 8 gigabytes of memory. It has over 1300 processor cores. This thing is just rad. I mean, check it out. I mean, it looks cool. It does take a lot of stuff to cool it down. It takes a lot of power. It's PCI Express 16. All right, coming back at you there, DoRag. So it's all up to you now. Let's get this bad thing in there. So the first thing you got to do is prepare the slots so that we can actually get the card in there. So this card particularly takes 2 slots. So to get them out, you got to break these away. These newer cases, they don't even put screw slots for the empty plugs. They just kind of like a little breakaway. Once you break them away, then you have to actually purchase a plug if you need to plug it back up. But yeah, you just bend it a few times and it'll snap on off. Yep, let's go ahead and get that other one out. And let's, yeah, come on. There we go.
Jim, they were very easy to take out.
Yeah, so, you know, everybody looks at it at first and it's like, oh, how am I going to get this thing out of there? I've even seen people go in there with tools. Next thing is we need to go ahead and pull off this protector off of the pins. This is another one where, you know, hey, let's make sure that we're staying safe for all the electronics. Try not to touch the pins. All right, so let's go ahead and put this thing in. Go ahead and finish taking that off. Yeah, there you go. All right, so one of the things, make sure all the cables out of the way so that we can go ahead and slide this thing in. Nope, the other way. Yeah, go in that way. There you go. It is a nice tight fit. It's the only problem with using a cheap case.
And this one you have to push down harder, I think.
Yeah, so you'll see here. So first thing we got to do is make sure we get that lip past the motherboard because we don't want to press in until then. And then go ahead and line it up into the socket. Yeah, there you go. And then, so apply with both hands. Push both hands, and then you'll hear it click. Boom. Nice. Perfect. Great job. So let's go ahead and put the screws on the outside, get this thing locked down. And then next, we'll go ahead and wire up the power. So let's get to there.
So what cables would I use?
So over here in our pile, you're going to find a cable that fits that spot there, and in most power supplies they label the cables, and what you're going to look for is one that says PCIe on it, which stands for PCI Express power. And you know, all the devices normally on PCI Express use this same type cable. Okay, let's go ahead and plug in that. Yep, right there. Those connectors that have like the 2 connectors in one, make sure they both go down in the plug. So the littler one goes in first because the other one will push down on that littler one.
They're a little hard to push in.
Yeah, just push it till it clicks.
Yeah, you make sure you put the little one in first. Like that. There you go. All right, once you get that pushed in, then you're going to go ahead and plug it into the other side. All right, DoRag, down to the final stretch here. Let's go ahead and plug it into the ATX power supply. You'll see a port that's labeled PCIe, just like the cable actually says, and that is going to give you the right power into that cable. Yep, you just push it on in until it clicks. Great job. Now, the next most important step before we go any further and turn this thing on is we need to get all the cables tidied up, and once we do that, we're going to be ready to turn this thing on.
Let's turn it on.
What's that, Bolts? Wait a minute. Okay. I'm good now. All right, we'll push the button.
No smoke.
No smoke.
Oh, that's cool.
Check out them lights.
There we go. Everything looks like it's lighting up correctly. Let's see what the screen says.
Looks like Las Vegas.
Yep, we are booting Windows. That is a good sign. Alrighty, so here we go. Let's get this Windows installed.
So what operating system do you want me to click on?
So we're going to do Windows 10 Pro. I like the Professional because it has a few extra things that allow me to do some of my programming and such, and it all comes included in Pro. Go ahead and accept that. It's just a typical thing that comes up where they ask for all your information. The next thing is we do want to select disk 0 partition 2. That second partition is on our fast NVMe drive.
What does that stand for?
All right, DoRag, so that actually means, non-volatile memory host controller is really what it is, but that's what it is it's the controller type that is actually used to make it communicate between the solid state chips and the actual motherboard and processor. So that's what NVMe is.
It's pretty cool.
Check it out.
That thing just installed Windows in 32 seconds. That's pretty awesome. And that is from a USB drive. So let's keep it on moving. Let's see if this thing's going to boot up.
Hopefully it does.
Yeah, well, you know what? I've seen the worst. But you know what? DoRag built this thing, so I'm sure it's going to work. Hey, we got lights on again. Disco time. We should play some music here in the background. Pretty cool looking lights, pretty cool looking case actually for I only spent $20 on that case. Newegg special. I'll throw that link on down at the bottom. It's a fun little case to start with.
Yeah.
Getting ready for the first time. Windows likes to do all its updates and get ready. It always tells you it's getting ready. I don't know what it's getting ready for. Finally, here we go, DoRag. This is going to be the complete startup test to see how fast this thing starts up from scratch. Watch it happen. In less than 15 seconds, you will see the Windows screen with it completely booted and ready to go. So we're in BIOS at 6 seconds. We're now already in the boot welcome center. And now there's the login at 11. Now at 13, 14, 15. Check it out. DoRag, what do you think about your first computer build?
I think it was a success.
Did you have fun?
Yes, I had a lot of fun building the PC.
So do you think you'll do it again?
Yes.
Jim coming at you.
Thanks for watching.
Just click the buttons like and subscribe, please. Make some comments.